What's good, everybody? It's the Cloud with Cap show. Shout out to Dana White and the UFC, one of the biggest sports industries in the world right now. How did it get to become such an empire? First of all, we got to give a shout out to the GOAT, which I think is Jon Jones. Clearly the GOAT, and shout out to Conor McGregor. Without Jon Jones and Conor McGregor in the past 10 to 15 years, the UFC would not be where it's at right now. It wouldn't be as big as an industry as it is today. I mean, let's call it how it is. McGregor and Jon Jones, dude, them two alone have generated millions, billions of dollars for the UFC, dude. And we have to look at McGregor. Yes, numbers don't lie. Recently, McGregor's 1-3 in the last 4 fights. He's 22-6 in his UFC, career for McGregor. But we look at McGregor, I mean, he's about 3 or 4 in the top 5 highest pay-per-views in the UFC history. I mean, he's number 1. Him and Khabib, UFC 229 was the highest selling pay-per-view in UFC history, with 2.4 million pay-per-view buys, which is insane, right? 2.4, that is such a high number. I mean, shout out to Khabib, one of the best UFC fighters they've ever seen. Obviously, I do think he retired a little bit early, which we really would have saw Khabib really maximize his potential. But that's another story. But I just think for Jon Jones, 26-1 in UFC, his only one loss was throwing an illegal elbow. That was back in 2009, dude. So we look at Jon Jones and see, well, look at all the championship fights Jon Jones has had to go through in the light heavyweight division. Yes, there's a new light heavyweight champion. Well, that's because Jon Jones is going to heavyweight. And I'm really excited to see Jon Jones at heavyweight. I'm wishing he would fight already by now. I thought Jon Jones would have a fight, June or July or August, sometime this summer. I don't know what's going on, but we look at his championship fights against Shogun Rua. This was way back in the day. He knocked him out, TKO. Against my favorite UFC fighter, Rampage Jackson, he choked him out in the 4th round, which Rampage, he was a former champion. A lot of these guys are former champions, dude, and Jon Jones makes it look easy. So we look at Jon Jones' resume and say, hey, he's got to be the GOAT in the UFC. Yes, Anderson Silva's great as well, but Jon Jones is clear favorite, dude. Lyoto Machida, he choked him out. He's a champion, a former champion. Rashad Evans, he beat him a decision. Victor Belfort, he beat him a submission, dude. Chael Sonnen, he beat him, dude. The list goes on. Alexander, he beat him twice, which Alexander Galveston, his first fight was a decision victory, which was the closest fight that we've seen in Jon Jones' career. It was one of the times where Jon Jones was actually getting hit in the face, where it was like, wow, Jon Jones is human after all. He really is. He is so human. But he beat him the second fight, punches. And then, Daniel Cormier, a former champion, beat him twice, dude. In the second fight, we saw Jon Jones do that crazy leg kick. It was a crazy fight and knocked him out. And all the talk, you can say what you want, but Daniel Cormier, he's a legend in the UFC. He lost to Jon Jones twice. You know what I'm saying? Jon Jones made him look average. You hear it, like Anthony Smith, he beat him by decision. Dominic Reyes, his recent light heavyweight fight, he beat him, which, that fight was like, oh, wow. Like, Jon Jones did look human as well. Same thing with the Alexander fight. It was one of those where it's like, okay, Jon Jones is exploited. He does have weaknesses in his game. And I think the weakness for Jon Jones is himself, dude. He's only beating himself in all the out of the octagon, all that stuff that's going on. I think Jon Jones is really hopefully overcoming all those demons that had him in the past. All the troubles that he's been through. But I'm telling you, Jon Jones, dude, like, those are all championship fights, and he beat him, made him look average, dude. And like Cormier, everyone's fan favorite, Daniel Cormier, now an announcer for the UFC, he made him look average. You know what I'm saying? Knocked him out, dude. Jon Jones is really that guy. And I think Jon Jones has generated billions of dollars for the UFC and Dana White. So I think Jon Jones, he needs to be back sometime this year. I cannot wait. But, we have to understand the biggest name in UFC, if not, in all athletes right now worldwide, Conor McGregor. A lot of people know him, and I think Conor McGregor's best fight, this was back in 2015 against Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes is a wrestler, and really this fight, he was supposed to fight Jose Aldo. That backed out. But anyway, this Chad Mendes, he was beating him the first round and a half. Late in the second round, we saw McGregor bounce back, fight like a warrior, never give up, get back to his feet, And we saw McGregor knock Chad Mendes out late in that second round by TKO. And the ref had to stop it. And McGregor, I think that was really the peak of McGregor right there. That was the warrior McGregor. That was the hungry McGregor. Now we see McGregor, his past 2 fights against Dustin Poirier. His first loss, he got knocked out. Second loss, we saw the broken leg. I just think right now for Conor McGregor, he made it to the top, right? He will become a billionaire, coming from really humble beginnings all the way up to the top. I just think for McGregor, the hunger's not there anymore. Now, let's say if I was in McGregor's shoes, would the hunger be there? You got yachts, you got private jets, you got all these things in your life. I mean, you don't have to fight anymore. To whereas back in the day when McGregor was coming up, dude, back in the day, he was hungry, dude. He was fighting for something. He was fighting for everything, dude. He was fighting for food on the plate. That's what McGregor was fighting for, man. And now it's so different. And we see that. We don't see the hungry McGregor. And against Chad Mendes, that fight, that was hungry McGregor. That was McGregor. He was getting mauled, kind of like he did at UFC 229 against Khabib, but he bounced back from that. He got to his feet. He rose from adversity. It was an iconic fight. And then later on, UFC 194, he knocked out Jose Aldo in seconds, dude. And then we saw he's 1-1 against Nate Diaz, which Nate Diaz is in the number 4 right now to most pay-per-view sales. Him and McGregor 1.5 pay-per-view sales at UFC 196, dude. I mean, crazy. UFC 194 against Aldo was 1.4 million. That's in the top 5 highest pay-per-view gates in UFC history, dude. And then second was UFC 202, a rematch when McGregor did lose to Diaz at 196. He got it back, got the revenge. He won at UFC 202, and that was the second most. 1.6 million pay-per-view buys. And that was him and Diaz, dude. UFC 202, that was iconic as well. And McGregor, he bounced back from that. And I want to see McGregor eventually fight Diaz again. Diaz, I heard, is on his last fight of his UFC contract. So why not? Wouldn't that make sense, right? I think it's going to draw, right around the same numbers, if not more, Diaz and McGregor. And we understand Nate Diaz is towards the end of his career. And I think for Diaz, why not maximize your potential right here and say, hey, let's go McGregor round 3 here. If I do beat McGregor, who knows? We could do another one. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much more money to be made for Diaz and McGregor here. And McGregor understands that. But right now, I just think for McGregor, the hunger's not there, and he already maximized that. But for the UFC to where it's at today, it's because of McGregor. It's because of Jon Jones. These guys, man. These guys are the ones that really over the top for the UFC now. We're seeing different cats, different athletes, even professional NFL athletes coming over to the UFC. I just think the UFC, it looks easy on TV, right? I throw a leg kick, knocking somebody out, but, I just think it's harder than what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? It's tough to get hit in the shins and the knees. Getting hit in the rib cage, getting elbowed in the face. Like, all that's real, dude. And the UFC continues to grow, and there's new champions year after year. I just think for McGregor and Jones, dude, they build it to where it's at right now. Absolutely, dude. Imagine the UFC right now today without Conor McGregor and Jon Jones. Imagine that. Would it be as big? No, absolutely not. And shout out to the women's division of Ronda Rousey. She built that up to where it's at today. I just think for Ronda Rousey, she blew up so fast. And then, obviously the downfall in UFC, losing to Amanda Nunes, getting really embarrassed in Holly Holm. But I just think for Ronda Rousey, she has nothing to hang her hat on. She really overcame the top, overcame the odds. And really, for the UFC in women's division, it was because of Ronda Rousey. I don't care if it was hype, whatever the case was. She gave hope to the women's division and to where it's at today. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you right now, dude. And Dana White, he's just collecting. And a lot of people say, they're not paying the UFC fighters enough and all this. I don't understand. I don't know the business side of it. I just know that Dana White should really applaud Jon Jones and McGregor. Really. And we understand that, Dana's golden boy is definitely Conor McGregor. He's the best seller. He's the cash cow of the UFC, even though he hasn't fought since last summer against Dustin Poirier. And I watched that fight, and really, McGregor came out really fast. First 2 minutes, throwing crazy leg kicks. And then we saw Dustin get him against the cage and then get him on the ground. I just think for McGregor, man, it's the end. It really is. I don't know how many fights he has on the UFC contract, maybe like 4. I don't know. I just think for McGregor, the end is near in the UFC for him, and I think he understands that. And I think whoever he fights next. If he loses, he's done, dude. He cannot lose again. He can't, dude. McGregor cannot afford to take an L in the UFC. And really, we look at McGregor's career and say, well, what happened, right? He went over to fight Mayweather in the boxing match. And yes, he did lose to Mayweather. Mayweather's one of the best boxers the world has ever seen. Definitely in the past century, dude. And we look at McGregor and say, oh, he lost, he got knocked out, whatever. But really, it was like, McGregor never boxed in his life before, dude. And he fought one of the greatest boxers of all time in Floyd Money Mayweather. And he lasted over 10 rounds. Dude, that's unheard of, dude. That goes to show you really how real of a fighter Conor McGregor is. From roots on roots, Conor McGregor is a true champion. He's a true warrior. And he went 10 rounds with arguably the best boxer the boxing's ever seen, dude. Like, it's spectacular, and everybody wants to minimize it and say, well, he lost. But in reality, I think McGregor won overall. Yes, he did lose the boxing match against Mayweather, but he won with finances. He won legacy-wise, lasting that long. Some people, he fought him way better than Canelo Alvarez fought Mayweather back in 2013. And people say, well, Canelo was such a young kid then and there. But, at the end of the day, Mayweather and McGregor produced such crazy numbers. It was iconic, dude. But I just think from, ever since that fight for Conor McGregor, the hunger's kind of disappeared. Then he goes to fight Khabib, highest gate, in UFC history at UFC 229. And then, ever since then, I just think the hunger's gone for McGregor, man. He's just not as active anymore, to whereas back when McGregor was coming up, he was fighting 3 or 4 times a year, dude, in these big pay-per-view events, man. And now it's like, now we only see McGregor once a year. And I just think that's it for McGregor. I don't know what's going to happen next. He definitely has to fight somebody, right? And I just think for guys like, for instance, Michael Chandler. This guy, he's such an electric fighter, such an exciting fighter, and he's an athlete, dude. I think Michael Chandler would match up great against Conor McGregor. He likes to stand on his feet. He likes to bang in there, so I can't wait. Hopefully that fight happens, and really Michael Chandler's a beast. I think, he deserves maybe a rematch with Charles Oliveira, which he did lose the first time. Who knows about that? But we just look at these two fighters in general, right? For Jon Jones and Conor McGregor, it's just like, dude, the UFC, man, they continue to build, man. And we look at the next superstars, right? Israel Adesanya, I think he's another big superstar. Now, is he going to be like Jon Jones? I don't know. He's going to have to beat champion after champion, dude. Jon Jones is beating champion after champion, dude. And all these fights that Jon Jones has fought in the light heavyweight division, they were all championship fights, dude. They were for everything. So if Jon Jones would have lost that fight, it's over for Jon Jones. No, Jon Jones continued to win and win and win, dude. So I'm excited to see that Jon Jones hopefully will be back sometime in the heavyweight division. Is he going to fight Francis Ngannou? What's going to happen? I don't know. It's a long shot for that fight. Who knows about it? But, when you have Conor McGregor, cash cow, man, you have to respect it. And I think Dana White understands, man, when Conor McGregor does retire from the UFC and when Jon Jones is completely done from the UFC, we lost 2 really legends of the sport. I would put Conor McGregor and Jon Jones up there with Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell built it in the early 2000s to where it's at. Even my favorite fighter, Rampage Jackson, a former champion back in 2007, knocked out Chuck Liddell. Those guys brought it all the way up, dude, all the way to where it's at right now, dude. It's so crazy to me, and I think the UFC's continue to get bigger and bigger, and I think Dana White, he is such a genius, right? Him and a couple guys that got together and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build an empire here called the UFC, the Ultimate Fighter, and we're going to go all the way with it. And they did, dude. They ran it all the way, and I love it, dude. And I think UFC people today, man, they're more in tune with it. I think the UFC is so big now, and I think boxing will definitely be of the past. And I know we've been saying that year after year, but I truly believe that the UFC is such a true fight form. You don't just use your hands. You use your legs, your wrestling, jiu-jitsu. You use everything. It's Ultimate Fighter, dude. Like, you have to use all your tools. To whereas boxing, you just use your hands. That's it, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? You only have a certain amount of tools, to whereas I think the UFC is going to continue to get bigger, and they're going to continue to produce superstars. Like I said, Israel Adesanya, Francis Ngannou, these champions that are coming up. I just think, for McGregor, man, it's been a heck of a run. Nothing to hold his hat on. In 20 years from now, we will remember McGregor. We will say back then, hey, McGregor changed it the way it is today. All the trash talk, all the anticipation up to the fight, dude, just everything, the energy, all that. To whereas I do believe that at the end of the day, the greatest UFC fighter that we've ever seen is definitely Jon Jones. He will be a household name for decades on decades into the future. I truly believe that. Now, one thing I will say about Jon Jones is if we don't see him again, that's going to be devastating. I do want to see Jon Jones in the heavyweight division. I do want to see Jon Jones become heavyweight champion of the UFC, of the world. I really do. I think that'll solidify Jon Jones as the true go-on-go. Light heavyweight champion. He said, you know what, I want to move up. So he's going to forfeit that belt and say, I've been dominating the UFC light heavyweight division for so long, about a decade. I've been dominating the division for a decade. What more do you want me to do? So I think Jon Jones is going to go up to the heavyweight, which he is, and going to dominate the heavyweight division. I cannot wait to see that. That's going to be iconic. But where's the UFC going to go today? It's going to continue to get bigger. It's going to continue to grow. And like I said, these main events are going to continue to get bigger. Now the pay-per-view sales, obviously, UFC 229 is going to be hard to beat. 2.4 milli. Like, dude, that's crazy, man. Khabib and McGregor, and Khabib starting up his own fighting stuff. I just think, Khabib, I really do believe that he did retire a little early. I think everybody would agree with that, but I just think, with Conor McGregor right now, a lot of people call him Con Man McGregor, but, when you get that high, when you get to the top, you get that financially stable, it's like the hunger will kind of ease on you, right? He's not fighting anymore for food, dude. He's not fighting to pay the bills. Like, Conor McGregor's made it, dude. Like, a lot of people who are in Conor McGregor's shoes would already retired. Would have retired 2 years ago when Khabib retired. But that's why I love Conor McGregor. And that's why I believe a lot of people love Conor McGregor. Why? Because he's a true fighter, and he wants to fight everybody, and it doesn't matter who they throw at him, dude. That's why people love McGregor, man. That's why they flock to him, because he's a true fighter, he's a true champion, and he's one of those stories where he comes from humble beginnings, used to be a plumber, all the way up to in the B Club, the Billionaire Club. I love this, dude. So I think all the Conor McGregor fans, they're fortunate right now to say, hey, he's coming back to whereas, if you're that type, dude, and been like, dude, I don't have to work anymore. I don't have to get punched in the face. That's why I do believe Conor McGregor is a true fighter. He loves it, dude. That's what he was bred to do, and that's why I think he's coming back, dude. Whereas, last year when he fought Dustin Poirier, he didn't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, he's already financially set, dude. Just don't buy 100 jets, 100 Lamborghinis and 100 mansions and you won't go broke. You know what I'm saying? Like, just common sense here, dude. But it's easy to go broke off anything, dude. It really is. But I just think the UFC and Dana White, he's such a smart man, dude. He's so smart, and we're starting to see new cats come in and really dominate, dude. And I think the UFC is going to be as big, if not bigger, than the NFL here in America. I really do. I think, obviously NFL right now, I think is the cash cow in American sports. But I just think, dude, overall, the UFC is going to be right there with the NFL. They're signing deals. People are tuning into their fights, and I love it, dude. And I can't wait. They got a big fight coming up in July 2nd. Huge card. Shout out to Max Holloway, Izzy, Alexander. I can't wait for that fight, but that fight card. But for McGregor and Jones, I really do think their legacy's already set. Let's say they never fight again, which I do think they'll both fight, but if they never fight again, their legacy's set. Definitely Jon Jones and McGregor, dude. They built it up to where it's at today, and I love it, dude. So shout out to McGregor, shout out to Jon Jones, shout out to Dana White, the UFC, baby. Let's go!